Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next lecture in our course Reasoning LLMs from Scratch. In the last lecture, we took a significant mental shift in terms of the representation of our value function. Previously, we were using tabular methods for representing the value function. The problem in the tabular methods is that if you have a problem with a large number of states, for example, in the game of chess, there are more than 10 raised to 46 states. It becomes impossible to write down the value function for each and every single state, and it consumes a huge amount of memory. That is why, in all practical cases, tabular methods are not preferred. Then we looked at, okay, if not tabular methods, then what is the solution to this? The solution is that of the ability to generalize. If we look at a certain states in our agent environment interface, and we say that, okay, I'm going to find the values of only these states, and then I'm going to use these values to estimate the values for all other states. Now, if we are able to achieve this generalization, it will give us the capability of observing only few states, understanding the values of those states, and then extrapolating from those states to all other states in the state space. This is exactly what we have been focusing on in the last lecture. And when I say generalization, the first thing that might pop to your mind is, well, traditional machine learning does exactly the same. Isn't it very similar to function approximation? Yes, it is. But the only difference is that in reinforcement learning problems, the target is not known to us beforehand. The value function is not known to us beforehand. And also, the target is non stationary, which means that the target is continuously changing in a lot of problems. So, because of these two issues, we cannot use traditional ML techniques directly in reinforcement learning problems. In the last lecture, we built a very nice structure where we understood, okay, first let's define a loss function. And this loss function is going to help us train our approximate value function such that it matches the true value function as much as possible. Now, to do this training process, we need an algorithm. How do I modify the weights of my value function, the weights of my approximate value function? We denoted these weights by W, and we saw that, well, gradient descent comes to the rescue here as well. We will use gradient descent to update the weights of our approximate value function. And gradient descent gives you the most steepest direction for any given weight parameter, such that if you go in that direction, the objective function changes by the maximum amount, which is exactly what we want. So we use the gradient descent technique and we wrote down an update rule. Now, the issue with that update rule was that the update rule is written, but the update rule depends on the true value function. For example, this is the update rule that we wrote. Just forget about, or don't look at the green text which you see in the figure. In the update rule, we can see that there is this term which is the true value function. Now the problem is that the true value function is not known to us beforehand. We looked at how to solve this problem. We replaced the true value function by an approximation whose expected value is the true value function. There are two such approximations. One is the Monte-Carlo return, and the second is the temporal difference return. With the Monte-Carlo return, we can use the exact same formulation because it does not depend on the value function or the weights. But the temporal difference target involves a value function estimate itself, which depends on the weight. So ideally, we cannot use the same gradient descent update rule, but people ignore this variation of the value function of the next state with the weights, and we use a semi-gradient rule to solve this problem, which allows us to keep the existing update and neglect the variation of the value function of the next state with the weight parameters. And so, at the end of the last lecture, we covered all these methods. Now, we have not yet discussed how do we represent the value function exactly in terms of the weights. Let us understand that there are two methods broadly speaking. The first are a type of methods which are called as linear methods, and the second methods are called as non-linear methods, which use neural networks. The linear methods, as the name suggests, use a very simple function to represent the value function. And this function is given by the multiplication of the weight vector with a vector which is called as x, which is called as the feature vector. So if there are two weights, if we have w1 and w2, then and if the feature vector is given by x1 and x2, then the value function simply becomes w1x1 plus w2x2, which becomes a very simple way to write down the value function. And then x1 and x2 are known to us beforehand. We use some approximations to them based on the information that we know about the problem, and all we have to do is then estimate w1 and w2. Now, what about the gradient of this value function? Remember that in all these update rules, we have a gradient. So some of you might be unfamiliar or uncomfortable with the gradient. That is completely fine. But essentially, what the gradient is doing is calculating the derivative with respect to all the weights. So if I calculate the derivative with respect to w1, I'll get x1. And if I calculate the derivative with respect to w2, I'll get x2. So the gradient for the linear case then only becomes x1 and x2, which can be represented as x of s. So in this case, v hat was written as w1 x1 plus w2 x2, and if I take the gradient, I get x1 of s and x2 of s, which is x of s. So it's a very simple way of representing the problem, because I will then substitute x of s over here, and I have a simple update rule. What I do is, let's say I am in a state and I get a reward. So what I do is I add that reward to my previous estimate of the value function of the next state, and I subtract it from the estimate of the value function of the current state, and I just multiply it by the feature vectors, which is x of s, because my grad is given by x of s. So for the case of two weights, and for any weights for that matter, the gradient descent update rule can be for Monte Carlo can be written as this, and for temporal difference method it can be written as this. Because of its very simplistic nature, the linear method is very preferable for a lot of problems. In fact, within the linear method itself, there are multiple subtypes. Uh, there are there is a method called coarse graining, which allows you to very efficiently estimate these feature vectors. So, depending on the type of problem, usually people use different feature vectors. If it's a periodic function, then you use vectors which are periodic. We are not going to look at the different ways in which the linear feature vectors can be written. However, if people are interested, you can take a look at the Sutton and Bartow book, in which there are 5-6 pages devoted on how do I calculate the feature vectors. But the linear methods offer a very simple mathematical way of updating the weights. And this is how now our entire analysis using linear methods is complete. Now, okay, let's look at non-linear methods. For many interesting use cases, linear methods are not used because it's very limited with respect to the functions that you can approximate. They are linear in terms of the weights. But problems like, let's say, AlphaGo bet, the human Go champion, here AlphaGo used neural networks to approximate the value function. So non-linear methods were used. Even in reinforcement learning through human feedback, or reasoning models like GRPO algorithm, which is used in DeepSeek. All of these algorithms or methods or AlphaGo systems like that, they have used neural networks to approximate the value function. And neural networks are very widely used for nonlinear function approximation. In the neural networks, we have an input layer, which are the states in this in this case there are a bunch of hidden layers, and then finally you get an output. Now these input layers are connected to these hidden layers through these connections, and all of these connections have a weight value, let's say w1, w2, w3, etc. And the whole purpose of neural networks is to fine tune these weight values so that the input matches the output the best. In this case, the output is the approximate value function. And this is what makes neural networks very suitable for nonlinear function approximation, because it is well known that if you increase the density or the depth of the neural network, you can approximate a lot of different problems. For example, convolutional neural networks, which are used to analyze images. Previously, people could not analyze images that efficiently, but as they increase the depth of the network, we could analyze images with a lot more efficiency. And now there are so many algorithms which use neural networks as the backbone. So it makes sense that we use neural networks for approximating our value functions as well. And this is the field which is called as deep reinforcement learning, or deep RL. Uh, when I encountered this name before, it did not make much sense to me. But I understand now that whenever you use neural networks to approximate the value functions, then it is called as deep reinforcement learning. And we are going to cover a lot of aspects of deep RL in the subsequent part of these lectures. Okay, now we have looked at two different ways of writing down the value function using linear methods, non-linear methods. We have looked at a way for writing down our update rule as well. Now the question is, okay, this is fine, but how do I optimize my policy now? How do I find the best policy? This is exactly the same method that we used for temporal difference methods, let's say, or Monte-Carlo methods. So whatever follows is exactly same as we used in classical methods, but I'll recap here once more for the sake of completeness. So let's say you are in state S, okay, and you want to find, there are a lot of actions and you want to find the best possible action. This is what finding the optimal policy means. At every state, I need to select action which is the most optimal. And how do I do that? Well, one way is you calculate the values for all of these actions, which is denoted by q of s comma a, and you find the action which gives you the maximum action value, which means the maximum value of q of s comma a. So we will use an approximate value function here, approximate action value function, which is q hat of s comma a comma w. So what we'll do is, for every state, we will look at all these action values and we will pick the action value which has the maximum value. This will be, and we will pick the action which has the maximum action value. This will be our policy. This is called as greedy policy. But we make a slight change like we did for Monte Carlo and temporal difference. With small probability epsilon, we choose a random action. For example, if you have action 1, A1, A2, A3, A4, and the values of our approximate value function for these are 20, 30, 10, and 15. So 95% of the time you will use A2 when you encounter state S, because the action value is maximum. But sometimes you will choose randomly, maybe 10, 15, or 20. This is called as exploration. So what happens is that if we only continue this greedy action selection, our model does not explore other options. That is why we use this epsilon greedy policy. So the 5% probability by which I choose actions randomly, that is the epsilon value, which is 0.05 in this case. So this is called as epsilon greedy policy. Our policy is going to be epsilon greedy policy for the purpose of finding the optimal policy. But what is the algorithm? How do I go from start to finish if I have an agent interacting with the environment, going through a lot of states? How do I find my optimal policy? Well, let's understand that now. So let's say we go from one state to the next state. So from state S, we go to the state S dash. So that means that okay, there has been just one interaction with the environment, and we have transitioned from one state to the other state. This means that we have now a chance to update our weight values, because the agent has collected some new information from the environment, and we immediately want to use that information to update our approximate value function. Now, whenever we want to make these updates immediately, we know by now that we use temporal difference methods, because for Monte Carlo methods, we need to wait till the end of the episode. So we update the weights by using the weight update rule, which we saw before. Here we know RT plus 1, because this is the immediate reward which you get in the process of transitioning from state S to state S dash. This is the value of this state action pair, and this is the value of this state action pair, which is the next state action pair, and this is simply the gradient which is determined from whether we are using a linear method to estimate the approximate value function or a nonlinear method. So this is the update rule which we are going to use. We have used two things here. Firstly, we have used the gradient descent rule for the temporal difference method, and secondly, we have also use the fact that when we are transitioning from state S to state S dash, we will be making an immediate update. So now the algorithm follows from both the epsilon greedy policy and this weight update rule. We'll start from one state. We will select the action using our epsilon greedy policy, uh, and then we will from that action we will observe the reward and the next state. And from the next state S dash, we will choose another action A dash using the epsilon greedy policy, and we'll use the update rule. So essentially, we start from state S, take action A, go to state S dash, take another action A dash, and these state action pairs will be used to update my weights. I and then I again proceed. I again update my weights. I proceed again update my weights. So iteratively, as I'm interacting with the environment, my weights are getting updated. As my weights are getting updated, my approximate action value function is getting updated, and then which is updating my decisions for every state, because I'm using the epsilon greedy policy. This is exactly how the SARSA algorithm worked when we saw the temporal difference methods. But essentially, once you have solved the value function prediction problem, this is the control problem, which is estimating the policy. It's straightforward. It remains the same, even in classical RL and even in while using the approximate value function methods. All you do is that you use a epsilon greedy policy and you update the weight at each interaction using this temporal difference update rule for the approximate value function methods. Okay, so this brings us to the end of this lecture. In this lecture, we looked at two methods, linear and nonlinear methods, to estimate the value function and to write down the functional form of the approximate value function. Once that is done, we completed our weight update rule, and then we looked at, okay, weight update rule is completed, but how do I find the optimal policy? So we used epsilon greedy policy, and we looked at how the weights are going to be updated after each transition, which is very nicely depicted using this figure. um, these two sessions, this lecture and last lecture, they come under the category of approximate function methods, which is what we are going to do for the remainder of the RL series. So I want all of you to be quite comfortable with these notations of hats, gradients, etc., and weights. And the next lectures are going to be very, very interesting, because now we are slowly reaching the modern algorithms which are used in reinforcement learning. Thank you very much, everyone.